Can you imagine being tortured under the hottest desert sun, while a rock heavier than your body is placed on your chest? Your lips cracking from thirst, your skin burning, your body shaking, and the only word you can say is, Ahad, Ahad. One God, just one word, over and over, while they mock you, while they laugh, while they expect you to break. And this is what nobody expects. This slave didn't just survive. He became so honored that the Prophet Muhammad himself said he heard his footsteps in Jannah. And wait until you hear what happened when this slave returned to Makkah years later, because the same city that tortured him was forced to listen to his voice. Welcome back to Light of Islam TV. Today we're telling the story of a Sahaba that's more powerful than any movie you might have watched before. But before we begin, you need to understand something dangerous. Islam wasn't a religion back then. It was a complete crime. In Mecca, Arabia was a world of absolute hierarchy. At the top, the wealthy Quraysh families, untouchable, powerful, divine by birth. And at the bottom are the slaves, which are not categorized as human, but a property. This is the story of Bilal ibn Rabah. He was a slave owned by Umayyah ibn Khalaf, one of Islam's worst enemies. In Mecca, slaves had no rights, no dignity, no protection, no voice. They worked until their bodies broke, then discarded. But something was happening in the streets of Mecca that made this story come into existence. A secret message was spreading, a message about equality, a message that said, all humans are equal before Allah. And when Bilal heard it, he knew his life would never be the same. Islam wasn't preached to Bilal in a mosque. There were no mosques yet. It was whispered to him in complete darkness, in secret, in fear. Someone told him, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. And this is where the story begins. For the first time in his life, someone was telling him he was more than a slave, that his soul and humanity is counted. Bilal accepted Islam that day. But here's the hidden truth nobody mentions. Accepting Islam as a slave in Mecca wasn't brave. It was suicidal. Because if they found out, there would be consequences beyond imagination, which is exactly what happened to Bilal. Umayyah ibn Khalaf found out. And when he found out, he saw it as a threat. The torture began in the streets of Mecca, in public. Umayyah wanted everyone to see what happens when a slave chooses God over his master. They dragged Bilal to the desert, the hottest part of Mecca, under the noon sun, and they placed on his chest a rock, not a small stone, a massive rock, heavier than his entire body. The smell of burning sand filled the air. His skin began to blister, his lips cracked and bled. People gathered to watch. The wealthy Quraysh laughed. Women mocked him, children threw stones, and Umayyah stood there. The man Bilal had served for years, and he said, deny Muhammad, say his God is false, and I'll end this. Bilal did something extraordinary. Through the pain, through the burning, through the mockery, he whispered and said, Ahad, Ahad, one God, one God. And then something shocking happened. Word spread through Mecca about this slave who wouldn't break. A wealthy Muslim named Abu Bakr Siddiq, one of the Prophet's closest companions, heard about it. And Abu Bakr made a decision that changed history of Islam till today. Abu Bakr appeared at the torture scene. And he did something the Quraysh didn't expect. He bought Bilal's freedom. He paid the full price to Umayyah, every coin demanded. Umayyah was shocked. You paid that much for a slave? And Abu Bakr said something that echoes through history till today. I didn't pay for a slave. I did it for Allah. Then Prophet Muhammad heard about Bilal. Not just heard. The Prophet knew. He knew that Bilal had been tortured and refused to break. He knew that Bilal had chosen Allah over his own life. And the Prophet made a decision. Bilal would become the first mu'adhin in Islam, the first person to call humanity to prayer. Do you understand what that means? This wasn't a random job. This was the most honored position in the early Muslim community. The voice that calls to prayer. The voice that reminds people to stand before Allah to come and worship. Now I want you to think about this for a second. The same mouth that was forced to beg for mercy. The same voice that whispered ahad under torture was now calling thousands of believers to stand before their Lord. Bilal climbed the rooftops of Medina, and he called, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Then something divine happened. The call was so powerful, so pure, so full of sincerity, that people would literally stop what they were doing to listen. But the Quraysh in Mecca were watching, and they were furious, because they realized something terrifying. The slave they tortured had become more honored than any of them. But that is not even the main miracle. Years passed. The Muslims grew stronger, and eventually, they returned to Makkah, not as slaves, not as refugees, as victorious. The Battle of Badr had already proven Islam's truth, but now at the conquest of Makkah, something unexpected was about to happen. Bilal was standing with the Prophet, with the army of believers, and in the crowd of Quraysh, Bilal saw a face he would never forget, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, his former master, the man who had tortured him. In that moment, Bilal could have killed him. He could have taken revenge. He could have said, "This is for every rock on my chest. This is for every moment I couldn't breathe." But Bilal didn't, because Islam had transformed him into something more than his pain. Instead, Bilal watched as justice unfolded. One day, the Prophet Muhammad told Bilal something unexpected. "Oh Bilal, I heard your footsteps in Jannah last night." Not your voice, not your deeds, your footsteps. Because every footstep you took toward prayer, every step toward Allah, Allah heard it. But here's the secret that makes this even more powerful. Do you know why the Prophet heard Bilal's footsteps in Jannah? It wasn't because of the famous moments. It wasn't because he called adhan in front of thousands. It wasn't because he was honored by the Prophet. It was because of something private, something nobody saw. Bilal had a habit. Every time he performed ablution, he would pray 2 units of prayer, in private, with no one watching, just him and Allah. Nobody knew about it, nobody celebrated it, nobody praised him for it, but Allah recorded it. And the Prophet told him, "It's because of those private moments with Allah that your footsteps will echo in Jannah forever." But this is where I want you to pay more attention. When Prophet Muhammad died, Bilal was devastated. The man who had freed him from slavery, the man who had elevated him, the man who was like a father to him, gone. And Bilal tried to continue. He tried to call adhan as if nothing had changed. But when he reached the words, "I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah," he couldn't continue. His voice broke. His tears fell to the ground. The man who had called adhan thousands of times, the man whose voice had never wavered under torture, could not say the words, because the pain was too deep, the love was too heavy. And so Bilal made a decision. He left Medina. He couldn't bear to call adhan without the Prophet. He couldn't bear to hear the echoes of memories everywhere. The voice that had shaken Makkah became silent. Because love sometimes breaks you louder than torture ever could. After some years, Bilal returned to Medina. He didn't plan to call adhan. He had no intention of reliving the pain. But when he arrived, the people of Medina gathered around him. "Bilal," they said, "please, just one more time. Call adhan for us, for the memory of the Prophet." And Bilal, now an old man, climbed the minaret one final time. He looked out over Medina, the city that had been his home, the city where he had been elevated, the city where he had learned to love Allah. And he opened his mouth and called, "Allahu Akbar." Allahu Akbar, and the entire city cried. People wept in the streets, women screamed, men fell to their knees. Because when Bilal's voice called that adhan, they heard the voice of the Prophet again. They heard the voice of faith, the voice of sacrifice, the voice of a man who chose Allah over everything. That final adhan was the most powerful moment of Bilal's entire life. But because it was filled with every tear he had ever cried, every moment of torture he have witnessed, every private prayer, every step toward Allah. And when he finished, Bilal was at peace. His voice had delivered its final call, and the entire world would remember it. Bilal ibn Rabah's story isn't ancient history. It's a message for right now. If this story shook your soul, subscribe to Light of Islam TV, because there are more stories like this. Stories of real people, real faith, real transformation. Share this with someone who needs to hear that Allah doesn't forget the oppressed. Because Bilal's voice is still calling, still reminding us, still inspiring us. May we all become like Bilal, unbreakable in faith, sincere in worship, and eternally honored in the sight of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.